connect this right up to Zoom. And this Friday, I'm going to be giving a Zoom webinar. You can see the guests to my right, and I'm going to be using Query.Live. This is this tool that I've just built. It's been 2+ years. I've been working with a partner, Future.Live. Very proud of it. And I would suggest that if you are on a desktop, what you do right now, just take any phone and open up your camera app. Both iOS and Android camera apps have a QR code capability natively built in. It's that fast, and right now I'm already in, taking an audience poll, submitting questions, and fun, throwing up emojis onto the screen. All right? So this is Query.Live. It's a better way to do live Q&A, polls, and chat, commentary, as well as this fun emoji stuff while you're using Zoom and Zoom webinar features. And so we are going to be doing that again this Friday. I've got a can't miss Future of TV panel, and I'm so delighted to have just added John Kosner to that panel. I also have returning guests Pat Crakes and Salil Dalvi. And I want to just say a few things about each of these folks. So Pat Crakes, Pat spent 18 years in research and content strategy at Fox Sports in very senior positions there. He was essentially top brass for the most important position in the Fox Sports programming and content arsenal. He's also a leading and oft-quoted voice in sports media. Pat knows sports TV better than anyone, and I'm super excited to get his take on some of the things that have happened over the past few months since we last did this back in October. And in about a second, I'm going to show you a quick highlight from that October session. Also have with me Salil Dalvi, and he's also going to return on this Friday. All you need to do, by the way, to sign up is go to http://FutureOfTV.Live, or just type in FutureOfTV.Live. That's going to resolve to a Zoom webinar registration page. I make it really easy to register. It's free to do so. You'll see all the topics that we're going to cover day of on that page. And you're also going to find the bios of these fine gentlemen that are going to join me. So Salil Dalvi, Pat Crakes, and John Kosner. So John Kosner was already a sports media legend, an internet pioneer, and a 4-decade veteran of sports media. He retired, retire is not the right word. He left ESPN a couple of years ago. And he had stints at Sports Illustrated, at the NBA, where he was in charge of U.S. broadcasting during the Dream Team era. He's been at CBS Sports, NBC Sports, and multiple decades, or at least, 14 years where he led digital media at ESPN. And his tenure at ESPN was called by the Sports Business Journal. It was awarded Best in Digital Sports Media 5 times in 10 years. And in 2008, they named John Kosner the most influential in online media in 2008. And he has not slowed down even just a bit. Recently, he formulated a venture capital fund, Micro Venture Partners, with the late, great David Stern, Chairman Emeritus of the NBA. And so, and one of the areas that I think Mr. Kosner's invented over 15 different tech startups, probably more, but sports tech startups. And one of the reasons I really wanted to get him on this panel is because he's so close to this idea of two-screen entertainment, of interactivity, of sports betting. And so I thought it would be fun to get his opinion on all the latest and greatest in this domain. Now, if you have used that QR code, you should be in on this page now, which is not an app, it's just a mobile web page, and it makes it super easy for folks to put in a vote, right? And they can also ask questions here. I have a question, right? You're going to send that in. Now, I actually have moderation happening behind the scenes, right? I've automated moderation. It's leveraging Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services, and you can set as a user exactly how much content moderation you want that AI to perform. And I also have manual. So right now I'm just going to hit that manual approval. And when you see this tweet underneath me here go away, you'll see that next one come up and it says, I have a question. And so the beauty of this is that you don't have to do a screen share, or you might have some people that don't see the question. This way the question's right there in front of everybody and you can address it right then and there. You can also pause that queue, as I call it, in order to get dialogue and discussion. So that is just a brief preview of my technology that I will be using for this live webinar, a Can't Miss TV panel. We're going to run through my survey, which is a report that I'm going to give you a quick preview on right now. And we will also ask questions, and you will have a great opportunity to ask questions as well. So remember to pull those in using Twitter or the Query.Live app using the code DEMO. So here's the cover page of the new report, Winter 2021. I'm doing these every quarter. You can access them for free. You can register for this webinar. You will also be signed up to my quarterly email newsletter. If you'd prefer to just go straight to my email newsletter, you can sign up at ringdigital.tv/winter 2021. And that'll take you to a landing page. You'll be able to put in your information and get this great report. Now, as you can see, one of the things I wanted to find out about in this report was about QR codes. Why? Because as I just showed you, I think you're going to increasingly see QR codes pop up on a screen just like this one has right now. And so I decided to figure out, what do people know about QR codes? Is your average everyday person, and I'm thinking about the essentially the population of users on the internet in the U.S. So that's how I've confined the study here. We have over 1,100 replies. So it's a fairly significant sample, and we're asking them essentially, do you know about a QR code? Do you know how to use it? And 51% said yes, and I know how to scan it. Now, unfortunately, I did not run this study before the pandemic, but I wish I had, because I think that number would be a lot lower. And in fact, we're all experiencing an increasing urgency to use things like contactless payment, or to pick up our mobile phones, unlock a building or even a local news station. I'm seeing local news stations increasingly use QR code to get people to a website without having to do the whole Query.Live and then enter code demo, right? So that's really what I wanted to probe here. And I think it's going to make two-screen interactivity and betting and all these kinds of television commerce applications a lot easier. I've done this 4K question twice now. Obviously, consumers are a bit confused about 4K, but we asked them if they had basically any 4K, and the bottom line is this is a pretty low number considering how important these upgrades have been to the video and TV business in terms of enhancing our business model and getting broader engagement and distribution in our ecosystem. The upgrades to HD, for example, were very, very important and successful. So it's been way too long for us to get this upgrade to 4K, and part of that's just, it's not just about an upgrade to 4K, it's also about high definition, color range, essentially HDR, and in addition, frames per second, 60 frames per second. High dynamic range, by the way. Sorry about that. Not high definition, high dynamic range. It's basically a wider color gamut, and that increases the pop of the visuals that you'll see in a sporting context. So we've got a long way to go there. I also did probe the social video landscape again. I've done this quite a bit in different ways. This time I really didn't focus on the sports piece of it. I just said for online videos in general, what are the platforms that you're using most frequently. I only allowed one selection, so really Facebook and YouTube, you would expect those to fly to the top. What I didn't really expect to see, or maybe could have guessed it, but it's quite a stark difference, is that every single one of these platforms skews pretty significantly either female or male. And I found that fascinating. Facebook's skewing female, YouTube skewing male, Twitter skews male, Instagram skews female, and TikTok now we find out is skewing actually quite heavily female. So that's a pretty interesting discovery when you think about TikTok is like the platform to be on now, and they do have a wide range of sports content on TikTok. But it's interesting to me that it's sort of the least balanced, the least gender balanced of the various platforms that I polled. I've also taken this question multiple ways, multiple angles on it. So this is not a definitive way of thinking about relative audience sizing, but obviously news and sports are the two things that pull the bundle together and make it so compelling. And so it was pretty interesting to see that if you just ask people, look, do you watch this? And you say all the time or regularly, occasionally, you get roughly even numbers of folks that say, yeah, I watch live news all the time, or I watch live sports all the time, or regularly, occasionally. So, in the past, I've looked at various forms of data, and it always seemed to me that live news was a much bigger draw, actually, than live sports. And so this is kind of another colorful way to get additional data points on this question. Again, everything I do here, it's quantitative, but if you think about the sample sizes and the sort of artistic ways, you could say impressionistic ways, I've been told, by folks that study this for a living, you do have to kind of put a little bit of a grain of salt on it. It is, quantitative data that deserves a little bit of qualitative interpretation. But that's what makes it fun. So also just to recap some slides that I shared from fall, and I'll do this, actually probably won't cover this in our Future of TV Live webinar this Friday, but we did cover things like what's the go-to app for highlights. I also did the same study for social media that I previously showed you here, but we focused just on sports video highlights. Amazing there, you see TikTok shooting to the top. I do have a condensed highlight of the previous webinar if you're interested, and that's going to be in my library. So if you sign up for FutureOfTV.Live or you go to ringdigital.tv/winter 2021, you will get a copy of not only this deck, but all of the decks I've published previously. Many surveys over the years that have helped to identify the big trends happening in the streaming landscape. Also did a really interesting piece of work last year, starting in 19 really, and then into 2020 on the RSNs. And again, a very impressionistic high-level view. So you could think of this as quantitatively assembled qualitative data. But I asked somebody, I asked people a very simple question in the past year: have you watched? And I actually conduct this survey within a state-by-state basis, right? So in Massachusetts, I asked if they watched Nesson, right? In Ohio, I asked them if they watched Sports Time Ohio. By the way, both of those had the highest numbers of people that said that they regularly or sometimes watched those channels. And of course, the point here, and we've seen the RSNs since this date, Sinclair has had to take quite a bit, I think maybe $4+ billion write-down. But you do see some of these, AT&T in Houston, for example, the Yes Network. I mean, even the California RSNs, fairly low numbers. You ask people, do you regularly or sometimes watch the California RSNs? And I labeled those very specifically. Bay Area, CSN Bay Area, Fox Sports Net or Roots, Prime Ticket in LA. And you just get a very low number. 23% say regularly or sometimes. So a bit of a canary in a coal mine, if you ask me. I also do fun stuff like this one, where you see people talk about the casual sports fan all the time. And of course, I know what people mean when they say that, but I just feel it's the wrong word, because people aren't really casual about sports fandom, right? They're just not into it if the game's not exciting, the players aren't exciting, or they're too busy to catch up on all of the activity. And so I thought I would just reframe the question here. Do you consider yourself a sports fan? And to give people an opportunity to say, exactly how their sports fandom expresses itself without calling them casual or, or some other sort of, moniker that suggests that they're somewhat less valuable, right? Also, advertising, huge uphill battle. You're going to see lower ad loads in streaming, no question about it. You've got to get more targeted ads. We've been at this for so long, and I think what's super interesting about this is just how negatively people feel about ads these days. And I just wonder if we're paying enough attention to the creative, right? And so you have things like frequency capping, which are technologies that are really hard to master. And when you can't master them, you get you get these ads just bombarded time and again, which can really, I believe, generate negative equity, right? And so the question is, can you at least change up the creative with some of these advertisers, make those ads a little less monotonous? So that's a little bit about the report that I just put out, a little bit about me. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to put this winter 2021 informational picture back up. It would be great if you guys could register for this event. Again, you're going to go to FutureOfTV.Live. That takes you to a Zoom webinar registration page. Would love to see as many of you join this as possible. And don't forget, get your questions ready. We've got three really bright folks here in the sports media landscape. We want to ask them some great questions, and that'll be a great learning experience for everyone involved. Alrighty, well, I want to thank you guys for paying attention, and have a great day. We will see you soon.